Sometimes you don't know a victim until you hear the darkest night of their life. In the sleepy town of Brookfield, Massachusetts, where the streets were lined with maple trees and porch lights flickered like fireflies, October 1995 began like any other autumn. But the arrival of Allison Green's disappearance would turn this quaint town into a place shadowed by fear and unanswered questions. Allison was 19, a bright-eyed journalism student at the local college, known for her inquisitive nature and determination. Her friends described her as someone who chased truth relentlessly, often writing late into the night for the campus paper. Her laughter was infectious, her dreams boundless. On October 14th, Allison left her dormitory to attend a casual gathering at a friend's house. Security cameras captured her walking down Maple Street around 9 p.m., bundled in a faded green jacket, her backpack slung over one shoulder. That was the last image anyone would see of her alive. Hours passed. Allison didn't return. Her roommate's growing concern led to a missing person report, but the small-town police, overwhelmed and inexperienced with such cases, initially labeled it a runaway. Precious time was lost. Days dragged on. Then on October 23rd, a hunter in the nearby woods stumbled on a shallow grave beneath a bed of crisp autumn leaves. The body was identified as Allison Green. The community's heart shattered. Detective Mark Harmon was assigned to the case, a man known for his quiet persistence and sharp intuition. As he pored over the evidence, inconsistencies surfaced. Lost files, conflicting witness statements, and unexplained delays. What had Allison been hiding? Why was her investigation into local corruption whispered about in shadowed corners? The mayor's public condemnation clashed with rumors of a deliberate cover-up. The answers lay buried, much like Allison's grave. Tonight we begin peeling back layers of secrecy in what became known as Case File 23. A case that tore a town apart and still haunts the shadows of justice. The town of Brookfield, with its tree-lined streets and friendly faces, seemed like the perfect place to live. But beneath its calm exterior lurked the uncomfortable truth of fear and secrecy. After Allison Green's tragic death, the tight-knit community was left to grapple with shock, grief, and unanswered questions that cut deeper than anyone expected. Detective Mark Harmon, a man weathered by years on the force but driven by a strong sense of justice, felt the weight of this case like no other. From the very beginning, inconsistencies and gaps in the investigation gnawed at him. Reports that were hastily written, evidence misplaced or lost, and witnesses who contradicted each other made Harmon suspicious that someone was deliberately trying to derail the case. Allison's closest friends remembered her as a determined young woman who was never afraid to ask the hard questions. She had recently been investigating rumors of corruption within the town's political circle, a story that could shake the foundations of Brookfield's leadership. Some whispered that her relentless pursuit of the truth may have led her into dangerous territory. The mayor, a charismatic man with polished speeches, publicly condemned the crime and assured citizens of a swift resolution. Yet behind closed doors, Harmon heard whispers of pressure placed on law enforcement to keep certain individuals out of the spotlight. There were rumors of witnesses being intimidated, of files mysteriously vanishing, and of evidence that simply disappeared without explanation. The detective found himself caught in a maze of political interference and fear. His days became filled with long interrogations, revisiting old statements, and late-night stakeouts in hopes of catching someone slipping up. Despite his best efforts, each lead seemed to hit a brick wall, and frustration mounted. Families affected by the tragedy organized vigils in the town square, their flickering candles symbols of hope in the encroaching darkness. News crews descended upon Brookfield, turning Allison's story into a symbol of injustice and the systemic failings of small-town law enforcement. Headlines screamed of Case 23, a file that now represented more than a missing person or a murder. It was a story about the struggle between truth and power. Yet in the shadows of the town's quiet streets, the truth remained buried, tangled in webs of silence, fear, and denial. Detective Harmon often found himself staring into the night sky, wondering if justice would ever prevail. The haunting memory of Allison's face, full of hope and life, pushed him forward. He knew this case wasn't just about a single victim. It was about restoring faith in a community fractured by secrets. Despite the obstacles, Harmon vowed not to let Allison's story fade into oblivion. Every thread he pulled, every whispered clue he chased, was a step closer to unraveling the mystery. But with every revelation came new dangers, shadowy forces working tirelessly to keep the past hidden. In the end, the question was no longer who killed Allison Green, but rather, how far would those in power go to keep their secrets safe? Years slipped by, and the once fiery pursuit of justice seemed to dim as the case grew cold. Brookfield settled into a tense silence, the ghosts of Allison's story lingering in the air, but without a voice loud enough to be heard. Detective Harmon continued his quiet vigilance, refusing to give up on the missing pieces of the puzzle. Then a decade later, a new spark ignited hope. An anonymous tip, delivered late one rainy night, reached the police department, a voice from the shadows claiming knowledge about that fateful October night. The call detailed a man seen lurking near Maple Street around the time Allison disappeared, someone with a dark past and a reputation for violence. With fresh determination, the police reopened the case and turned to new forensic technologies that had emerged over the years. Old evidence, once thought too degraded, was re-examined under powerful microscopes and modern DNA analysis. A breakthrough emerged. Partial DNA traces found on Allison's jacket matched a man named Richard Cole, a transient with a criminal record for assault and theft. Richard Cole had long been a shadow on the fringes of the community. He was known to drift from town to town, leaving a trail of petty crimes behind him. His alibi for that night was vague and inconsistent, and yet when arrested, he vehemently denied any involvement. The media frenzy that followed painted Cole alternately as a monster and a victim of circumstance. The town was divided. Some saw in Cole's arrest the long-awaited justice Allison deserved. Others whispered doubts, sensing that a scapegoat was being handed over to satisfy public outcry. The trial was a bitter spectacle, unfolding over months with sharp legal battles and intense public scrutiny. Yet despite the prosecution's efforts, the case against Cole was built on circumstantial evidence. The defense highlighted the holes and uncertainties, the lack of direct proof tying him to Allison's death. After weeks of tense deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict: not guilty. For many, the acquittal was a devastating blow. The true killer walked free, and the shadows that had enveloped Allison's story only grew darker. Detective Harmon, though disheartened, resolved to keep fighting. The evidence didn't disappear, and the truth was still waiting to be found, hidden somewhere in the layers of lies and forgotten whispers. As the courtroom emptied and the crowd dispersed, the question remained: was justice truly served, or was this merely another chapter in a long, painful saga of silence and loss? The acquittal of Richard Cole only deepened the shadows surrounding Allison Green's case. The town of Brookfield was left with more questions than answers, and a restless community that refused to let the story fade into oblivion. But while the legal battle had ended, a new chapter was just beginning. Sarah Morgan, a young and fearless investigative journalist, arrived in Brookfield with a mission: to uncover the truth buried beneath layers of silence and deception. Armed with determination and a sharp mind, she began digging into the forgotten corners of Case File 23, piecing together fragments overlooked or intentionally hidden by others. Her investigations uncovered troubling evidence of missing police files, documents that vanished without explanation from the department's archives. Interviews with reluctant witnesses revealed inconsistencies in their statements, hinting at coercion or fear. The deeper Sarah dug, the more she realized that the case was entangled in a web of political protection and systemic corruption. Threats soon followed: anonymous phone calls, shadowy figures lurking near her apartment, and warning notes slipped under her door became part of her daily reality. Yet Sarah's resolve only grew stronger. She knew that exposing the truth could cost her safety, but the memory of Allison Green and the countless victims silenced by the system fueled her courage. Sarah's articles began to shake the foundations of Brookfield's power structures. Public outrage swelled as more citizens demanded accountability and transparency. Protests erupted, and pressure mounted on local officials to reopen the investigation with full independence. Detective Mark Harmon, now retired but still haunted by the case, reached out to Sarah. The two formed an unlikely alliance, a partnership built on shared pain, frustration, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Together, they pored over old files, re-interviewed witnesses, and followed new leads. The renewed investigation revealed evidence of tampering, forensic reports altered, testimonies suppressed, and timelines manipulated to protect powerful figures. It became clear that Allison's murder was not a random act of violence, but a carefully concealed crime designed to silence inconvenient truths. As the community rallied behind Sarah and Harmon, the fight for justice was reignited. But with every step closer to the truth came greater danger. The forces determined to keep secrets buried were relentless. The question lingered in the air: how many more Allison Greens were hidden in the shadows? And how far would those in power go to ensure their silence? The mounting pressure from the public and the persistent efforts of Sarah Morgan and Detective Harmon pushed the authorities to officially reopen Allison Green's case with a new task force. This team was promised full autonomy to investigate without interference, a rare but vital development in a town clouded by mistrust. However, the shadows that had long protected the truth were not easily dispelled. Internal leaks warned key suspects, and attempts to sabotage the investigation quickly surfaced. Members of the task force reported intimidation, surveillance, and unexplained data breaches. It became clear that this was not just a police investigation, but a battle against a hidden network of influence. Amid this chaos, a surprising new witness came forward: an estranged family member of a prominent local politician. His testimony unveiled a series of secret meetings, hush-money exchanges, and efforts to silence those close to Allison's discovery about political corruption. For the first time, tangible proof began to surface: emails, recorded conversations, and financial records linking high-ranking officials to a cover-up that went beyond a single murder. The implications were staggering. Corruption, bribery, and the systemic abuse of power had become a norm. Detective Harmon, once isolated in his pursuit, now found himself part of a growing movement demanding justice not just for Allison, but for the entire community. Sarah's articles fueled the fire, spreading awareness far beyond Brookfield's borders. Yet the deeper they delved, the more dangerous the investigation became. Threats escalated from warnings to direct attacks, cars tampered with, break-ins at homes of key witnesses, and even violence against activists rallying for truth. The case had transformed from a single tragedy into a symbol of the fight against corruption and silence. It was no longer just Allison's story, it was a story about the courage of those who refused to be silenced. As the new evidence piled up, the town braced itself for a reckoning, one that would expose not only a murderer, but the rot that had infected the heart of Brookfield. As the investigation intensified, the town of Brookfield was gripped by a mixture of fear and hope. The veil of secrecy was lifting, but the price to uncover the truth was becoming increasingly clear. Every new piece of evidence brought the community closer to justice, but also closer to danger. Detective Harmon and Sarah Morgan found their work scrutinized and obstructed at every turn. Key witnesses recanted their statements under pressure, and crucial evidence seemed to vanish mysteriously. It was clear that powerful forces were determined to protect their secrets at all costs. Amidst the chaos, the personal toll on those involved grew heavier. Sarah received threats against her family, forcing her to take protective measures. Harmon, already a man weathered by years of service, felt the weight of the case more deeply than ever, haunted by Allison's face and the community's fractured trust. The media frenzy surrounding the case reached a fever pitch. News outlets across the country picked up the story of Brookfield's darkest secret, shining a harsh light on a town once hidden in the shadows. Public opinion pressured local government to act decisively, and demands for transparency became impossible to ignore. In a surprising turn, a whistleblower from within the police department stepped forward, offering crucial insider information. This anonymous source confirmed suspicions of evidence tampering and revealed the names of officials involved in the cover-up. With this new testimony, the investigation gained momentum. Legal proceedings began against several high-ranking officials, and the community felt a cautious optimism. But even as justice seemed within reach, the undercurrents of fear remained strong. The battle for truth was far from over, and the scars left by years of silence and deception ran deep. For Brookfield, this was a turning point, a chance to reclaim its integrity and honor the memory of Allison Green. Detective Harmon and Sarah Morgan vowed to see this fight through, no matter the cost. The journey was long, and the stakes were higher than ever, but for the first time in years, hope was no longer just a distant dream. As trials commenced, the courtroom became a battleground where the truth clashed with years of deception. Prosecutors presented the mountain of evidence collected by Sarah Morgan, Detective Harmon, and the renewed task force. The weight of documents, testimonies, and recordings painted a vivid picture of conspiracy and betrayal. The accused, powerful figures once untouchable, now faced the consequences of their actions. The community watched closely, many still haunted by the pain Allison's death had caused, but hopeful for justice. The courtroom drama unfolded with intense emotions, heated exchanges, and unexpected revelations. Yet the path to justice was riddled with obstacles. Defense attorneys fought fiercely to discredit witnesses and suppress evidence. Attempts to intimidate key players continued outside the courtroom, reminding all involved that this battle extended far beyond legal proceedings. In the midst of it all, new voices emerged, survivors and victims of similar cover-ups, who found courage in Allison's story and the community's fight. Their testimonies added layers to the complex narrative, exposing a broader pattern of abuse and silence. Sarah Morgan's relentless reporting kept the public engaged and informed, turning a small-town tragedy into a national conversation about corruption, accountability, and the resilience of those who refuse to be silenced. Detective Harmon, once a solitary figure in his quest, now stood with a community united by grief and determination. The road was long and fraught with danger, but with every testimony and every piece of evidence, the darkness surrounding Case 23 receded. The question remained, would justice finally prevail, or would the shadows of the past continue to obscure the truth? The courtroom finally delivered its verdict, a moment that had been years in the making. Some faces in the crowd held tears of relief, others showed silent sorrow. Justice had come, but the wounds remained. Brookfield began to heal, slowly peeling back the scars of corruption and silence. The sacrifices of those who fought for the truth were honored, and a new era of transparency and accountability dawned over the town. Detective Harmon and Sarah Morgan became local heroes, their names forever linked to the fight that changed Brookfield. Yet even as the dust settled, the memory of Allison Green lingered, a reminder of the cost of silence and the power of perseverance. As the town looked forward, whispers of other unsolved mysteries began to surface, hinting at secrets still hidden in the shadows. But for now, the community had reclaimed its voice and vowed never to let darkness take hold again. And so, as we close the pages on the 23rd file in our archives, we ask you, what truths lie waiting in the next chapter? Stay with us, because the story is far from over. Thank you for joining us in Uncovering the Shadows. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated on the next file in our archives.